Hello, everyone. Tonight, we are standing on the edge of a world that doesn't quite know if it wants to end or begin. You squint through the ice fog, your boots sinking slightly into crusted snow. Something huge is moving ahead, shaggy, deliberate, and out of place. A camel, yes, but not the kind with sand in its teeth and heat rippling off its back. No, this one is taller, hairier, built for a place where the sun doesn't rise when it should. And you probably won't survive out here, not even with your best snow gear. Your fingers would stiffen within an hour. Your eyelashes would freeze. You'd learn real fast what it feels like to be hunted just for exhaling too loud. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. And post your location and local time in the comments, especially if it's after midnight. Now, turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get started tonight. You're not in the desert. You're not even on land that wants to stay solid. You're at the edge of a frozen sea, and something is moving across it with the slow rhythm of a memory you didn't know you had. The air is too quiet. Even the wind seems to be tiptoeing tonight. Your breath fogs up and hangs around like it's reluctant to leave your mouth. Somewhere ahead, you see the silhouette again, a hump, long legs, ears flicking against the cold like they've heard your thoughts. It's a camel, but not really. This one's different. Built for the Ice Age. Built to cross oceans that forgot how to be liquid. Its fur is so dense it looks like smoke frozen mid-rise. Its feet are dinner plate wide, almost comically padded, but they leave no trail in the snow. The animal glides forward like it's walking on memory, not terrain. Historians still debate whether this northern camel was a species of its own Camelus borealis, or just a very fancy cousin of the dromedary that got lost and liked it cold. What's not up for debate? Its bones have been found where camels should never be. Ellesmere Island, northern Yukon. Places where your phone battery dies just from looking outside. Odd fact. The fur of this ancient camel, reconstructed through protein sequencing and some lab wizardry, was likely reddish-brown and almost iridescent under the aurora. That's right, like an oil slick wrapped in wool. You move forward, crunch by crunch, trying to keep your balance as you trail it across the ice. The sea beneath groans because of course it does. The ice isn't solid, it's just having a particularly good day. And there's something weird about walking behind a camel in this kind of silence. In the desert, camels complain. They bellow. They spit. They act like unpaid actors in a bad soap opera, but this one's silent. Only its breath puffs out little ghosts that die immediately. You stumble a little. The ground slants, and it hits you. This was once a sea. A real one. You're walking across the Bering Sea, but in a time before the word Bering existed. Back when the continents flirted at arm's length and didn't have the guts to commit. The camel keeps walking and you follow, because what else are you going to do? Head back? There's no back. Only across. Every few minutes it pauses, not to sniff or graze, but just to stand. Like it's listening to something you can't hear. The way old people do when they say snow's coming and everyone under 30 rolls their eyes. The wind shifts. It tastes like copper and pine resin and something older. You swear the ice cracks not from weight, but from boredom. Like it's tired of holding up all these heavy memories. You wonder how it knew, how it picked a direction and just went. There were no maps. No instinct telling it Starbucks is this way. Just the pull of something ancient and unspeakable. A pressure behind the eyes, maybe. Or some muscle memory in its bones. Some researchers believe this camel used smell more than sight to find its way across the frozen sea. Its nasal passages were massive, designed not just for warming air, but decoding it like a biological weather app. You stop and crouch, pressing a palm to the surface. You expect cold. And yes, it's cold, but it's also vibrating. Faintly, like a subwoofer set to some primal frequency only animals remember. Up ahead, the camel turns slightly, angling toward a series of half-submerged ridges. Not land yet, but less sea. Maybe it's choosing the shallowest drowning possible. You take another step and flinch because a crack spiderwebs out beneath you. Nothing dramatic, no plunging, just a sharp reminder that you're not welcome here. The camel doesn't care, or maybe it does. Maybe it's been walking this line for centuries, never sure whether it's on the verge of discovery or disappearance. You finally speak, not to anyone, just to the air. How the hell are you real? It doesn't answer, of course, but it does pause again. This time it lifts its head slightly, sniffing upward like it's trying to find the stars through the clouds. And in that moment you get it. It's not walking toward anything, it's walking away. From extinction, from noise, from whatever fire chased its ancestors out of a northern Eden we'll never rediscover. That's the secret of this frozen sea. It doesn't keep you alive, it just keeps you moving. Because if you stop even for a heartbeat, the silence closes in. And the camel knows that silence has teeth. It takes one last step forward. So do you. The camel shouldn't be here. That's the first thing you feel, not think, but feel as you watch it drift between ridges of wind-pushed snow. It's too tall, too slow, too warm-looking for a place that freezes the moisture in your eyelashes and erases your tracks the moment you make them. You expect mammoths, maybe even woolly rhinos if you're feeling dramatic. But a camel? No one ordered that. And yet, there it goes, like it's got an appointment on the other side of time. You press your hand against a fallen branch for balance. It's not driftwood. It's the gnarled remains of a black spruce, stunted, resinous, and older than most cities. The tree crackles under your glove, frozen so long it barely qualifies as organic anymore. This forest doesn't look like much now, just bones of what once was. But 3.5 million years ago, this place was green. No joke. Researchers unearthed fossilized leaves and pollen grains up here, proof of a boreal forest that stretched across the Arctic. Birch, willow, larch, and in the middle of it all, that same damn camel. They found its leg bones deep in the permafrost of Ellesmere Island near the top of the world. Radiocarbon dating. A joke. This beast predates the invention of frostbite. They had to use other tools, protein remnants and collagen, ancient DNA teased out from fragments, so degraded they looked like fossil confetti. Turns out this thing didn't migrate north by accident. It was born here. You crouch beside an old track in the snow, not fresh but preserved just enough by the cold to show those wide, soft footprints. No claws, no deep punch into the ice, just a gentle pressing like snow agreed to make room. The camel wasn't a desert creature once. That part came later. Here's the kicker. Camels actually originated in North America. Long before they marched over dunes or starred in Christmas nativity scenes, they were forest dwellers, browsers, not grazers. Teeth adapted for nibbling bark and woody shrubs, not sandblasted twigs. Their legs were made for pacing soft, uneven ground, not racing across hot rock. And their eyes set wide, perfect for navigating forests full of shadows and fast-moving predators. You press on breath shallow, trying not to fog your glasses. Somewhere above, a raven calls a dry croak that sounds like it's clearing its throat before delivering a bad joke. The camel doesn't flinch, just keeps walking. You're starting to think it doesn't even notice you. Or maybe it does and doesn't care. Historians still debate whether this Arctic camel was a direct ancestor of modern dromedaries or an evolutionary dead end that left no descendants. One camp says it's Camelops hesternus's weird uncle. Another swears it deserves its own genus. Whatever the label, it's a reminder that what survives isn't always the most obvious thing. Sometimes it's the creature that walks without needing applause. You pause near a hillock crusted in ice and snow, and there under a thick veil of frost you spot antlers. Not attached, just half-submerged, one tine poking out like a question. You brush it off. Caribou, or something like it. Smaller than modern ones, but just as restless. They once roamed this forest too side by side with birds the size of motorcycles and short-faced bears that made grizzlies look like teddy bears with tax issues. The camel would have walked among them all. Not fast, not loud, just inevitable. Odd fact, camels have a third eyelid, like cats or lizards. A nictitating membrane that sweeps sideways across the eye to clear dust, or in this case, powdered ice. Evolution gave it sunglasses before sunglasses existed. That and double rows of eyelashes, perfect for sandstorms, or apparently snowstorms. The kind that freeze your skin while you're still complaining about your coat not zipping right. You try to picture it the camel in summer. Not the mosquito-plagued sludge pit we know today, but the ancient boreal paradise. Spruce forests full of golden light, ferns that reached your waist, flowers with names we'll never know because they disappeared before we started naming things. The camel would have blended in almost too well, reddish-brown fur masking it against tree trunks' long legs, allowing it to step over deadfall instead of going around. It didn't belong in the desert. It belonged here. Until it didn't. The Ice Age came and didn't ask for permission. What was once forest became snowfield. And the camel, it adapted. Slowly, patiently, like it was taking notes. When other animals ran, the camel thought. When they shrank, it bulked up. Its fat was no longer for drought, but for warmth. Its fur lengthened. Its instincts curled in like a sleeping fox waiting for the world to become survivable again. You crest a ridge, and there it is, just at the edge of the tree line where the black spruce starts thinning into open snowpack. The camel stops, turns its head, looks right at you. You blink. Then it's walking again unconcerned. You think maybe it recognizes you. Not you, but something in you. Something mammalian and tired. Something that's also been walking longer than it intended to. You can't tell if it's pity or amusement behind those massive lashes. It's starting to snow again, fine powder, falling sideways like static. You pull your scarf tighter, but the camel doesn't react. Doesn't hunch or shiver. It's been through worse. That's the thing about these survivors. They carry silence like armor. You've seen animals bluff and bark and run. But the camel, it doesn't need to. It's endured more climate shifts than your entire species. You trail behind, and for once you don't try to catch up. You just follow, like the forest did, like the winds still do. You begin to understand this isn't a creature out of place. It's a place out of time. And it never left. You're deeper into the woods now, or what's left of them. Black spruce grown under the weight of rime ice. Every branch looks like a crooked finger. You shuffle through knee-high snow, the kind that whispers secrets and little hissed crunches. The camel is still ahead, just far enough that you can see its silhouette, just close enough that it feels like it's pulling you forward by an invisible thread. This isn't the barren wasteland you expected from an Ice Age forest. No, this place is stubbornly alive, ancient, in a way that doesn't care if you understand it. The air smells like wet bark, frozen sap, and whatever dream a mushroom has when it decides to outlive the tree it's growing on. A flicker to your right, you turn. It's not your imagination. Something moved. You freeze literally and metaphorically. There's something watching you. More than one something. Then you see them antlers. A whole herd half buried in the landscape like they were born of it. Early caribou, or at least their great-great-grandparents. Shorter snouts, longer legs, faces like they've been through 100 winters and don't care about the 101st. They don't startle, just stare, like you're the surprise here, not them. And maybe you are. The camel pauses. One long ear flicks back toward the herd, but it doesn't turn. It doesn't need to. It's been walking among them longer than language has existed. This was its neighborhood once. Before the tundra, before the sea turned to bridge, before humans. The caribou shift slowly like snowdrifts learning choreography. One of them lowers its head to choose something half-frozen. You wonder what they think of the camel. If they think at all. Or maybe it's just accepted. The tall, quiet thing that always moves toward the edge of the world and never comes back. You move past them, careful not to make eye contact. Not because you're afraid, well, maybe a little, but because it feels rude. Like looking directly at a monument while it's grieving. Then the trees part, and something bigger steps out. You blink. It's a bird. No correction. It's a feathered creature the size of a motorcycle with talons that could open you up like a zipper. You instinctively crouch. It doesn't fly. It just stares at you from behind a snow-dusted log. Its beak is chipped scarred, eyes yellow too clever. This is one of those giant forest birds paleontologists still argue about. Maybe a relative of the forest rocos. Maybe something we haven't named yet, big enough to crush small mammals, fast enough to outrun regret, and apparently bold enough to stare down a camel. Historians still debate whether these forest terror birds overlapped with the northern camel's timeline. Some say yes based on certain scratch marks found on fossilized leg bones. Others say no, claiming different epochs. You're in no mood to take sides. Not when one is watching you breathe. The camel glances over its shoulder. Not at you, at the bird. And for a moment you swear they're speaking. Not in sound, but posture, time, recognition. Then the bird turns and vanishes into the thicket like it was never there. You exhale, and your breath clouds into something you're not sure you meant to say. Odd fact, camels have incredibly wide-angle vision, almost 320 degrees. They can see both behind and beside themselves without turning their heads. Evolution designed them to be watched and never surprised. Which makes you wonder, how often has this camel seen something before it saw itself? You keep walking. You're at that part of the journey where your knees stop negotiating. Every step is a mild insult. The cold climbs higher up your calves and toward your thighs, daring you to slow down. The camel stops again, not dramatically, just enough to look to the side. You follow its gaze and find an old spruce with claw marks raked down its side. Deep ones. Too high for a wolf, too angry for a bear. Whatever made those marks wasn't hunting for food. It was hunting for dominance. You've entered contested territory. The camel walks anyway. That's the thing, it never hurries. It never pauses long enough to be cornered. It just continues, even in the shadow of violence. And somehow, everything else moves around it. Like the forest itself understands not to interfere. You press on, every breath shallower, every step colder. The trees thin out again, and for a moment you see it. The forest from above. Vast, still, and strangely empty. Because here's the truth. No one puts on the exhibit labels ecosystems forget. They adapt. They bury their secrets in peat bogs and frozen lakes and wait for some idiot in high-tech boots to trip over them. But even when the bones are gone, the pattern remains. A rhythm. And that rhythm right now is shaped like a camel. It drifts through these woods like it owns them. Not in the conqueror sense, in the original sense. The "I was here before anything had a name" sense. You can almost hear the woods adjusting, remembering how to be something older than themselves. A gust of wind shakes a branch overhead. Snow spills onto your shoulder. You flinch and laugh, a real one this time. "All right, I get it," you mutter. "Not my story." The camel doesn't answer. It just walks. And you follow like a punctuation mark at the end of a sentence no one wrote. You thought you were prepared. Layers, boots, gloves, so insulated you could probably pick up a stove and not feel it. But nothing really prepares you for this kind of cold. The kind that slinks past your coat collar like it has a personal grudge. The kind that feels sentient. The camel, though. It moves like the air's just a suggestion. Its breath steams out in thick, rhythmic puffs perfectly spaced. Each exhale could fog a window back home. You start to wonder if it even notices the cold, or if it's just too old to care. You crouch to examine a patch of its tracks half filled with new snow. The pads are wide, comically so, and leave the faintest impression. No dragging, no slipping. Just perfect pressure distribution like the camel knew the blueprint of snow long before it fell. That's the thing about these prehistoric beasts. They weren't just built. They were crafted by time, by terrain, by a climate that didn't want them, but eventually respected them. The camel's feet are lined with thick, fibrous fat and rough hide perfectly evolved to spread weight over soft ground. In a desert that's sand. Here, it's slush ice, and the kind of snow that pretends it's solid until it decides to vanish under your step. Odd fact, camel fat isn't just storage. It insulates too. Their humps are basically portable furnaces packed with calorie-rich adipose tissue that helps stabilize body temperature. People always say camels store water in their humps. That's not true. It's fat. And that fat gets metabolized into both energy and water. The camel's a walking hydration station. Even up here where water is everywhere and nowhere at once. You glance up. It's snowing again, big, lazy flakes. You stick out your tongue on instinct. It tastes like freezer burn and disappointment. The camel pauses, not for you, for itself. Then it does something strange. It scratches its neck against a frost-encrusted boulder. Not exactly fascinating, right? But the motion is smooth, practiced, deliberate. This isn't random behavior, it's ritual. As if that spot, that stone, means something. Maybe a landmark. Maybe just a memory. You wonder how many times it's walked this exact route. If it ever forgets where it's been or only pretends to, you move closer and run a glove over the boulder. The surface is worn smooth in one crescent-shaped groove. You weren't the first to notice it. And neither was this camel. Generations of scratchers before it, maybe. Animals marking a stone with skin and hair and time. Historians still debate whether these Ice Age camels followed migration paths or wandered opportunistically. Some believe they returned to familiar routes year after year, like elephants do, remembering where ancestors died, where food once appeared. Others argue they just kept moving in whichever direction the wind didn't slap them. Either way, the behavior leaves a trail etched not in footprints but in tiny repeated acts, like this one. The wind picks up again, swirling snow into spirals. You pull your scarf tighter and keep walking. The camel's fur moves like a flag, caught in slow motion. You get closer. The texture's insane, thick outer guard hairs layered over an even denser undercoat. And get this, that fur's fire-resistant? No, seriously. Modern camels have fur that insulates against heat so well it doesn't ignite easily. Scientists think it's one of the reasons their bodies handle temperature extremes without losing hydration too fast. Now imagine that technology, but ancient. Upgraded for snow instead of sun. You blink hard trying to picture it back then, this same creature but surrounded by red trees and moss instead of white on white. Would it still have moved this slowly, this deliberately? Or would it have sprinted across ferns like a beast on fire? Nope. You doubt it ever sprinted. It endured. And there's a difference. Suddenly, a shadow flits across your path. You jolt. Just a raven. Flies low and crooked, cawing once before veering out of sight. But still, your nerves are jumpy. You're starting to feel the way prey animals must feel. Watched, listened to, calculated. You look back. The camel is already farther than it should be. Not running, just gaining distance in the slowest, least dramatic way possible. It doesn't need to hurry. It knows you'll follow. Or not. It makes no demands. You pass a cluster of wind-stunted trees, small gnarled things that shouldn't still be alive. Their bark is thick, flaking off like scabs. You touch one. It trembles. Or maybe you do. Odd fact, in ancient Arctic environments there existed a type of dwarf birch, no taller than your shin, but with roots that stretched meters below the frost. Like stubborn thoughts you can't dig out. These trees are the silent champions of survival. They don't look impressive, but neither does a camel until you realize it's been crossing frozen seas while you've been looking for cell service. You catch up again just as the terrain changes. The snow gets shallower, revealing a ground of frozen soil dotted with pale lichen and rock. The camel doesn't even slow down. It steps from tundra to gravel like it's crossing a memory. You trip, full body flail, arms out, face in snow. You sit there for a second, swearing silently, trying to decide whether your dignity can recover. The camel pauses again, just long enough for you to catch your breath. You think it might be laughing, just a little. You rise and dust yourself off. Yeah, you mutter. Real majestic. Ahead, the camel begins walking again. There's a strange comfort in its pace, steady, repetitive, like a heartbeat you can walk beside. No drama, no flinching, just the next step, and the next, and the next. You stop worrying about the cold, because somehow being near this thing makes it feel less personal. Like the cold isn't your enemy, it's just a setting. And the camel, it's the script. And you're the extra. And that's okay. You've been walking for what feels like hours, though time here doesn't behave the way it's supposed to. Your phone died somewhere back near the Ravens. Battery drained like it gave up on the concept of hope. So now you're measuring time by the rhythm of your breath and the number of times your left foot starts to cramp. The camel ahead never breaks pace. It just keeps sliding across the land like it's made of wind wearing a coat. And then the trees vanish. All of them. The world opens, not up, out, to a wide, flat plain that gleams in the pale light like a mirror nobody asked for. You squint and try to process what you're seeing. There's no land here, not really. Just a vast stretch of frozen sea, blinding, humming alive beneath its own stillness. You've made it to Beringia. Well, sort of. Historians still debate whether Beringia should be called a landmass bridge or a phase of Earth's emotional development. It wasn't always here. It comes and goes depending on how clingy the ice caps are feeling. But during the glacial periods, it was a superhighway for survival. A corridor of cold connecting Asia and North America, like a single breath drawn in over millennia. And here's the weird part, it wasn't entirely frozen. Beringia wasn't your average land bridge. It was dry, cold, windy, and speckled with steppe grass, dwarf shrubs, and animals that make modern wildlife look like plush toys. Giant sloths, short-faced bears, mammoths, and camels. Big, woolly, not here to play camels. You take your first step onto the ice-covered expanse and it talks to you. Not in words, in vibration. Deep groans that shift through your bones before you hear them. The frozen sea is always thinking beneath you. That's comforting and completely terrifying. The camel doesn't react. It just steps forward as if it's done this 10,000 times and knows where the safe cracks are. You follow foot by cautious foot, trying to place your weight exactly where its pads touched, like a clumsy echo. You wonder if the camel knows it's crossing between continents. Probably not. It just knows it's going away from something, or towards something. Either way, that's more direction than you've had in weeks. Odd fact, the camel's ancestors. North American originals were already crossing over to Asia millions of years before humans even figured out how to tame fire. They used land bridges like highways, striding across continents while our ancestors were still figuring out how to not get eaten by hyenas. And now, here you are, hunched behind one, trying not to fall through a bridge made of ancient weather. Your breath rasps in your throat. The wind has no temperature anymore. It just is. And the air smells like salt even though it's frozen. Maybe the sea never really forgets what it's supposed to be. Ahead, the camel slows. You do too. You're in sync now, not from choice but necessity. If it stops, you stop. If it walks, you walk. If it falls in, well, the terrain isn't uniform. Patches of snow drift over dark, slick ice. Some spots sag when you step on them like they're considering betrayal. You catch yourself whispering to your feet, "Don't you dare." The camel steps wide to avoid a shallow depression where the ice looks fogged from below. You follow suit. Your ankle turns a little and your boot crunches into something brittle bone maybe. You don't stop to check. You start to notice patterns in the landscape. Dark streaks under the surface. Long cracks sealed by time and fear. Old fissures. Maybe footprints of ancient migrations. Maybe just scars. You wonder how many creatures crossed here before. You wonder how many didn't make it. The camel tilts its head into the wind and blinks slowly, not like a reaction, more like a nod. Then it begins walking faster. You jog to keep up. The cold air stabs at your lungs, but at least you're warm from movement. Your face is another story. Your nose gave up 10 minutes ago. That's now just a decoration. Suddenly the camel stops, dead still, and you feel it before you hear it, a rumble from beneath, low, distant, like the sea remembering its muscles. Then a crack, not near, not immediate, but big, far off. One of the pressure ridges finally gave way, a reminder that this whole stretch of history is temporary. You swallow hard. Cool, you whisper like an idiot. Totally fine. The camel exhales, a slow, controlled breath, and then it kneels. Not in surrender, in ritual. It folds one long leg beneath the other, sinks into the snow, and presses its head slightly downward, eyes closed. And you realize it's listening. Not with ears, with bones, with everything. You kneel too. Because what else are you supposed to do? Something ancient is happening and you're not the main character. You press your gloved hand against the ice. It vibrates. Not with panic, not with warning, just movement. Somewhere beneath you, water stirs. It hasn't seen light in 10,000 years. It doesn't want to be part of your story, but it wants to be known. And the camel, it waits. It listens. Then slowly, it stands again and begins walking. Historians might tell you this land bridge was just a stretch of geography, that it existed for a few thousand years maybe. But if you're here now, knees damp, breath stolen ice humming beneath your ribs, you know the truth. Bering Sea wasn't a place. It was a season. A narrow, impossible window when migration became memory. And the camel. It never stopped crossing. Even when the sea came back. You're starting to get used to the sound of nothing, not silence. Not really. Silence is what you get in a quiet room with walls with insulation. What you're hearing now is the absence of everything you used to trust. No engines, no footsteps behind you, no bird songs that say, "Hey, it's morning." Just wind dragging its fingers across frozen miles and your own breath trying not to panic. The camel is ahead, moving into low mist that rides the surface of the ice like breath from something enormous, something asleep and dreaming beneath your feet. And then you feel it, that sharp pressure again. The one you've started calling being watched. You stop, turn, nothing. But you know, they're there. You can't see them, but they're on the edge. The wolves. Maybe a whole pack, maybe just a pair, but they're clever. Arctic wolves don't chase you down. They pace you. Study your rhythm. If you're weak, if you falter, they make a decision. Saber-tooths too if you're unlucky. Historians still debate whether saber-tooths ever made it this far, onto the ice bridges, or if they stuck to the inland edges where prey was more certain and footing less suicidal. But you've seen enough bones to know that something with big teeth followed these routes, watching, choosing, waiting. You squint at a snowdrift and see a flicker. A pale shadow moving too smoothly. Not wind, not deer, definitely not your friend. The camel doesn't flinch. It knows the rules. And one of those rules is simple: keep walking, do not slow down, do not look back. Not because of superstition, because of strategy. If you walk like you're not prey, sometimes predators forget to double-check. You step back into its path and keep going. Ahead, the landscape shifts. You're leaving the wide-open ice and entering a ribbon of land scattered with icy ponds and half-frozen creeks, small bruises where the sea still whispers its intention to return. The camel threads between them like it has a map of melting. You pause beside one of the pools. It's not much wider than a kiddie pool, but the depth is wrong, too dark, too still. You peer in and see movement under the ice. A swirl of bubbles, maybe gas, maybe something alive. You take a step back and trip on something hard. You look down. It's a tusk. Not a full one, just the curve of it partially exposed, frost-covered. You brush snow away with your sleeve. There's more underneath. Bone. A mammoth, probably. One of the ones that didn't make it across. The slush got them. This whole area is a graveyard dressed up as scenery. You keep walking. What else are you going to do? The camel avoids the low areas. Its nose twitches constantly, sweeping the air like a radar dish. Not just for predators, you realize, but for water. Ancient camels, according to some paleobiologists, could smell water buried beneath sand. Or snow. They could pick up the scent of moisture hidden under meters of frozen soil. Not by accident, by design. Odd fact, the shape of a camel's skull allows for massive nasal chambers, an adaptation not just for warming cold air or cooling hot air, but for analyzing air. These animals could read the atmosphere like a book you can't open. You follow it uphill away from the slush pit's boot slipping slightly on the hard-packed slope. The camel's gait is unchanged, graceful in that slow, shovel-footed way. It almost seems to hover just above the danger. You reach a ridge and glance back. Still nothing. Still watched. You try to name the feeling. It's not fear. It's not dread. It's the knowledge that you've entered a space where you're not alone and never will be. You move forward, again. The camel steps around another patch of darkened ground. You look closer. It's a sinkhole-thin ice stretched across the top like glass. Beneath it, water churns, slightly disturbed by your presence or something else's. Do not fall in, you whisper to yourself as if that would help. The camel glances back, just once, and keeps going. You smile because that one glance feels like the kind of compliment you can't get from another person. You passed whatever test the ice was giving you. Then the fog gets thicker. You lose the camel for a second. Panic floods your chest. You jog forward, arms out, calling softly, "Nothing." Then movement. A silhouette re-emerges from the mist, long and slow and certain. The camel is there waiting this time. Almost like it wanted to see what you do without it. You walk up beside it. Close enough to hear its breathing. A steady rhythm loud in this muffled world. The mist closes around you both. You're inside a cloud now. Vision reduced to outlines and guesses. Your foot hits something. A rib, half buried. Not the camels, not mammoth, something else. You wonder how many travelers this bridge has claimed. How many crossed it without knowing where they'd land. Not just animals, humans too. Early ones. Their bones don't last like camel bones do. They disappear or sink or turn to stories. You walk in silence now side by side, and suddenly you realize this isn't just a crossing. It's a ritual, a pilgrimage. The camel doesn't know it's walking across the bones of its ancestors. Or maybe it does. In the way trees know which direction to grow. In the way wolves know where you're weak. This is not a path. It's a memory repeating itself. You feel smaller than you ever have, and somehow that's okay. The first thing you notice is the smell. It's not strong, not disgusting, just wrong. Like dampness mixed with old things that should have stayed buried. You pause, snow crunching softly beneath your boots, and scan the area. The terrain is starting to buckle, sloping downward, softening at the edges. The snow looks thicker here, but it's not real snow. It's a disguise. Beneath the white dust lies slush. Beneath the slush, a secret. The camel doesn't stop. It angles away, careful not out of fear but recognition. And you realize you've entered one of the thaw pits. They're called Yodoma in some circles, permafrost depressions where ancient creatures vanished like whispered names. Mammoths mostly, but also bison wolves, even the occasional woolly rhinoceros. The kind of place where a misstep doesn't mean bruises, it means entombment. Odd fact, some thaw pits have exhaled enough methane to trigger small explosions. That's not folklore, that's chemistry. Whole patches of Siberian tundra have burped out craters big enough to swallow houses. Historians still debate whether early humans knew how to identify these death traps or just learned the hard way one unlucky footstep at a time. You tiptoe forward. That's not metaphor. You are actually tiptoeing because you're standing on what might be ice, might be snow, or might be a mammoth's frozen eyelid. The camel steps light, stepping only where the surface has tension. It's not just smart, it's practiced. Generations of memory stitched into every joint, every muscle twitch. This isn't guesswork, it's ancestral instinct. You keep your weight low, knees slightly bent. Center of gravity humming with stress. A few steps later, you see it. The pit. It's wide, dark, and looks disturbingly like a shallow pool of ink. Black water swirls slowly under the surface. And there, half submerged, half frozen, is a leg. Thick, shaggy, with skin still stretched over muscle. Mammoth. Still here, still rotting, still waiting. You stop breathing through your nose. It doesn't help. The air is warmer here. The permafrost exhales. That smell, it's rot laced with history. Like opening a tomb filled not with gold, but compost. The camel circles the edge of the pit, leaving no tracks behind, only memory. You follow it, eyes darting to every indentation in the ground. One wrong move and you're archaeology. There's something eerie about how still the water is. It should be frozen, but the methane, the warmth from below, the slow chemical unraveling, it keeps it just soft enough to swallow anything with poor timing. You wonder if the mammoth slipped, if the ground gave way, or if it simply laid down too tired to fight gravity and let the past cover it. The camel turns back briefly, and for a flicker of a second you swear it's mourning. Not because it remembers this mammoth, but because it remembers the concept of falling. Historians argue whether camels ever mourned. There are scattered reports, modern ones, of dromedaries nudging their dead lying beside them for hours. No proof, just anecdotes. But then again, what isn't anecdotal when the evidence melts? You pass another shallow depression. This one's frozen solid, inside bone fragments. Scattered, twisted, a partial rib cage like a forgotten harp. Lovely, you mutter. The camel doesn't acknowledge your sarcasm. You keep moving. The land here is treacherous, in a way that's almost polite. It gives you clues, soft spots, strange smells, air that feels just a degree too warm. It wants you to survive. Or at least it doesn't mind if you do. You glance up. The sky is colorless. Not gray, not white, just missing. Like someone painted over the idea of color. And it's quiet again. But this quiet isn't the peaceful kind. It's the kind where you imagine what would happen if the ice did crack. How long would it take for someone to find you? Days, centuries? Would your bones get cataloged? Would they find your notes, your equipment, your thoughts frozen mid-breath? Would they understand that you were following a ghost? You blink away the spiral. That kind of thinking isn't useful out here. The camel stops at the edge of a slight rise. Ahead, more ridges, more frost-slicked hills. A way out. But behind the pit, the mammoth, the story that never made it to its ending. You take one last look before ascending, and that's when you notice something. Tracks. Not the camel's, not yours. Human tracks. Old. Nearly erased. Just two faint impressions heading the same direction you're going. No obvious drag marks. No return trail. Someone else crossed here. Once. You feel a strange kind of kinship. Not with the person, but with the act. The decision to follow, not knowing if it leads to warmth or erasure. The camel waits at the top. It doesn't look back. Doesn't need to. It knows you're still coming. Because no one walks through thaw pits and doesn't follow the thing that didn't fall in. Your thighs burn. Your breath comes shallow, but you make it to the top. The camel exhales slow like steam off hot stone and moves on. And you realize this too was a test. Not just of footing, but of faith. Because crossing this place wasn't about avoiding death. It was about remembering what tried to live. The world goes white. Not gradually, not politely. 1 second you're watching the camel pad carefully over the hardening snowdrift. The next it vanishes, just gone. like a dream you wake from mid-sentence. The wind stirs, and suddenly the snow lifts, swirling sideways in thick, breathless sheets. You're inside a snowblind now. Not lost, not exactly, but no longer oriented. The horizon disappears. The sky is gone. The difference between ground and cloud is academic at best. Even your footsteps betray you fading instantly under fresh powder. The wind makes no sound. It's like walking through static, cold floating static. You panic for a second, just a second, and shout. Your voice feels muffled, swallowed by white. No answer, not even an echo. The camel is somewhere ahead? Probably, maybe, hopefully. It must be. You saw it just a moment ago, and something that big doesn't just vanish. Unless, well, maybe it does. That would be on brand. You try walking forward, one foot, then the next. The wind stings your cheeks. Your eyelashes are freezing together. You blink fast to keep them apart the way you'd blink in a sandstorm. And that's when it hits you, this isn't so different from a desert, really. Historians still debate whether snow blindness or dehydration was the bigger threat to ancient camel migrations across frozen regions. Both hit fast, both tricked your brain. Both could kill you long before anything dramatic like wolves or frostbite even had a chance. You pull your scarf tighter and push forward, trying to move like the camel head low steps. Even no hesitation. And then just as your nerves start unraveling, you see it. The shape. Blurry, tall, still. The camel. Barely visible in the haze like it's carved from fog. You move toward it instinctively like a moth homing in on the only porch light in the apocalypse. It's not walking anymore, it's waiting. You slow your pace, boots crunching quietly. It's standing sideways now as if bracing against the wind. Snow clings to its coat but doesn't melt. Its eyelashes flutter, not blinking but shielding. Modern camels have double rows of lashes. Turns out, so did their ancestors. Nature knew this was coming. Odd fact, camel eyelids are partially translucent. They can close them like goggles but still see where they're going. That's right, these creatures had built-in snow goggles. Meanwhile, you're out here blinking like a broken metronome. The camel sniffs the air. It doesn't look forward, it looks up. You follow its gaze. There's nothing there, just swirling white. But maybe that's the point. The camel doesn't walk blindly. It follows scent trails, temperature shifts, pressure differential, and alls, a walking barometer wrapped in wool. And right now it seems to be listening to the air. Maybe to memory. Maybe to the gravity of ice. You stop beside it. Close enough to hear the breath again, slow, rhythmic, a living metronome in a world without time. The snow stings your cheeks. You let it. Pain is useful here. Pain keeps you alert. Visibility drops even more. You can barely see your hand when you raise it. The camel moves, not fast, but decisively. And this time it doesn't just walk, it glides. It seems impossible, but its hooves make no sound. Its feet press into snow so softly that not even powder lifts. You follow, stumbling. Then you remember wide cushioned pads. The kind designed not to sink, not to slide. Camels evolved feet like snowshoes. You're basically hiking on chopsticks. You fall once, elbow deep into a drift. The camel doesn't stop. You haul yourself out, chest heaving, snow inside your coat now, and your pride is limping. You consider shouting again. But what's the point? This place doesn't reward noise, so instead you copy it. You close your eyes for just a moment, just long enough to feel the wind. Which way is it pushing? Which direction is colder? You open your eyes, take a few steps. Keep your breathing slow, controlled. The camel comes back into view, closer now. You keep walking, and then it happens. A pocket of calm. Just a dip in the terrain, a hollow in the storm where the wind drops like it forgot something and doubled back. And suddenly, you can see again. Only a few yards, but it's enough. The camel steps to a stone outcrop, black rock, cutting through white like a fossil in reverse. It lowers its neck and nudges at something half buried in the snow. You approach cautiously. It's a patch of lichen, pale green, flat and barely alive. You watch as the camel flicks its lip toward it. Doesn't eat, just investigates. You wonder, does it remember this place? Not consciously, but maybe in the same way salmon remember rivers. Maybe this patch of lichen is a breadcrumb in a map drawn by hunger temperature and luck. You kneel and touch it. It's dry, brittle, but it exists. Life. Even here. Odd fact, Arctic lichen can survive centuries, frozen only to regrow when thawed. In one case, scientists revived 400-year-old samples taken from beneath melting glaciers. The kind of thing that keeps biologists up at night, both thrilled and nervous. The camel shifts again, steps away. Not urgently, but with purpose. You follow. Snow thickens behind you. The calm pocket is closing. You don't look back, because that's the rule here, forward only. Visibility fades again. The storm returns. But you're no longer afraid, because now you're inside the pattern, not fighting it. The camel walks, you walk. The wind screams, you ignore it. This is the rhythm now, not seeing, but moving anyway. The ice is groaning, not metaphorically, not poetically, not in that wow, this place is spooky way. No, it's literally groaning beneath your feet like an old stomach digesting a meal made of ghosts. You're on the bridge now, the real one. The camel pauses at the edge of a narrow expanse that stretches farther than your eyes can follow, an endless flat whiteness broken only by faint ridges, where pressure has squeezed the ice into quiet wrinkles. You step up beside it, and the sound beneath is unmistakable, a low rising into a higher key, like a violin string being bowed by tectonic plates. The kind of sound that doesn't vibrate in your ears but in your teeth. This is the breathing bridge. Historians still debate what it looked like at its height, whether it was a stable frozen plain, a crust of snow above slush, or a sliver of land so narrow it could vanish with one bad spring. But one thing is certain, it never stayed still. This place moved, not like a river, but like lungs. And you're standing on its chest. The camel doesn't mind. It's done this before. Thousands of years ago. Maybe thousands of times. It steps forward carefully, testing the surface with each massive pad. Not with fear, but with reverence, like it's asking permission. You hesitate. Just one step behind. The ground beneath your boot gives slightly. Not a crack, just a sag like it's considering your existence. Then another groan. This one's longer, lower. You and the camel both stop. For a moment, the storm seems to pause too. The snow lift softens, and in that breath you see it, the camel kneels. Again. But this time not to listen, to pray. It sinks onto its knees slowly, front legs folding, its chest resting against the frozen surface. The way camels kneel in the desert when they're resting or dying. You hold your breath. Is it hurt? Is this it? Then you hear it. A slow, steady puff from its nostrils. The camel's eyes are closed. Not sleep. Meditation. Odd fact, camels, especially the wild species, have been observed kneeling on strange terrain before crossing. Some call it fatigue, others call it a weather instinct. But there's a theory still fringe that the behavior has less to do with exhaustion and more to do with listening. Using their bodies to feel the resonance of the ground. And this one, it's tuned in. The ice beneath you pulses again. A slow rise and fall. Breathing. The sea beneath, remembering it once had waves. You kneel too. Not because you understand, but because anything else would feel disrespectful. Your knees touch the surface. It's firmer than you expected, and warmer. You blink. That can't be right. You take off a glove, just one, and press your bare palm to the ice. There it is. Heat. Not much, but not nothing. Historians still argue whether geothermal vents played a role in keeping parts of the Bering land bridge walkable. Some think these warm pulses were part of what allowed life to pass over it, tiny thermal invitations. Others dismiss it, but you're feeling it in your palm. The camel exhales again. A long breath misting sideways, carried by no wind. Then just as quietly as it knelt, it rises and begins walking. Across the hum, across the breath, you stand slowly and follow. The ice creaks beneath your steps but never breaks. Maybe it knows you're with something older than fear. You walk in rhythm. Not fast, not bold, just in time with the camel's padded footfalls. There's no need to rush, not here. This isn't a place for speed. It's a place for listening. You begin to notice how the sound changes depending where you step. Some patches ring sharp, others dull. You start choosing your steps like notes. A quiet melody, a duet maybe. You and the bridge. You pass a low ridge barely noticeable but enough to give you a moment of height. You glance back. No tracks. Not even the camels. Snow is falling in such a fine mist now that it erases history in real time. You whisper, "Of course." The camel doesn't answer. You continue on. The world narrows again. No visible sky. No visible edges. Just the sound of breath, yours, the camels, the ices, and the rhythm of steps over an invisible past. The bridge under you might be solid, or it might be memory. You're not sure it matters anymore, because now you believe what the camel believes. This place isn't dead, it's sleeping. And if you walk gently enough, it will let you pass. It starts with a smell. Not fresh, not clean, not dangerous either. Just old. So old it doesn't register as scent at first. More like a texture in the air. A kind of dry, bitter memory clinging to your throat. You're on firmer ground now. Ice has given way to wind-scoured soil, hard as bone, rippled like muscle beneath a thin layer of frost. The camel presses on ahead, moving through a sparse plain of sedge and black rock. Not vegetation, just survivors, like everything else here. And then you see it just barely peeking out from a raised hummock, the edge of something too symmetrical to be natural. You move closer, kneel. It's bone, not fresh, not bleached either. Still dark from soil stained in shades of brown and gray. Part of a femur maybe. Camel maybe. Something big enough to leave a shadow in your chest. You brush away snow. There's more. Fragments first, then whole lengths. Vertebrae rib curves what might have once been part of a skull. You squint through your fogging breath. One of the bones has notches, not teeth marks, not weather. Tools. Historians still debate whether early humans hunted camels on their northern migration routes or merely scavenged what the ice refused to bury. Some say spear tips have been found near bones like these. Others argue the evidence is circumstantial. But this bone, these notches, this feels intentional. You stand slowly scanning the ridge. The camel has stopped waiting again. And just beyond it you spot something stranger, a circle. Not perfectly symmetrical, but deliberate. Stones arranged by hand, half fallen over, half sunk into the permafrost. Inside the ring, more bone. Smaller, cracked, burned, a fire pit. You crouch beside it and lift a stone. The underside is scorched. It crumbles slightly in your fingers. It's been dead a long time. You're not the first to cross this place. Odd fact-preserved footprints have been found in the Alaskan tundra that date back over 11,000 years. Whole families, adults, children, even dogs moving together across this frozen corridor. Most people think of the land bridge as a highway. It wasn't. It was a slow crawl, a test. A one-way prayer whispered into wind. The camel lowers its head toward the stone ring. Not in reverence, just recognition. Like it knows what this is, warmth that didn't last. You imagine them, those people. Huddled in furs, whispering into cupped hands, watching for shadows in the mist, eating whatever the camel left behind. Bones cracked open for marrow, teeth used where knives failed. Firelight flickering on faces too young to be this cold. You close your eyes and try to hear them. Nothing. Just the wind threading its fingers through broken ribs. You look down again. More bones, some arranged, some scattered. One looks polished by weather or by hands it's impossible to tell. Then you see it, a tooth. Big, flat, a camel's. You hold it in your palm. Heavy, like a fossilized coin from a kingdom that never issued currency. And you realize something. This camel, the one walking ahead of you now, it might be related. Not just in species, in blood. Maybe its great-grandmother died right here. Maybe she fed those people. Maybe she was the bridge. You place the tooth back in the snow, not out of respect, out of understanding. Some things shouldn't be carried twice. You stand and move to the ridge where the camel waits. It doesn't look at you. Doesn't need to. It walks again. So do you. The ground shifts again, sparser snow, more loose gravel. The smell returns, stronger now, like dried moss and bone broth. And then, unexpectedly, you dream. Not sleep dream. A memory that isn't yours. A landscape with no snow, spruce trees, deep moss, the sound of birds you've never heard before, and the camel. A herd of them, less shaggy, taller, browsing on shrubs in the golden light of a sun that never seems to set. You blink, gone. Your pulse is loud in your ears. You look around, half expecting the forest to reappear, but it's still snow. Still rock. Still real. The camel doesn't flinch. Maybe it dreams constantly. Maybe every step forward is a sentence in a book that was burned long ago. Historians would call it an imagined response to isolation. You call it something else. Inheritance. The camel has reached a narrow gully now. You follow it down, carefully sliding slightly on loose scree. The sides are lined with dark earth, the kind that hasn't seen light in 1,000 years. You stumble, catch yourself on a wall of permafrost. It's not dirt, it's fur. Fossilized, frozen into the wall. You gasp. A mammoth maybe. Maybe bison. You reach out, gently brushing it with gloved fingertips. It doesn't move, but it feels recent. Another pocket of preserved history. A creature that stopped just long enough to become a museum. The camel keeps going. You scramble after it, breath fogging again. At the top of the gully, the land opens wide. A flat stretch, wind-beaten, pale blue light reflecting off ice-crusted rocks. The camel turns slightly facing the horizon. You stand beside it and see something impossible. A skull, not fossilized, just there, bleached, resting on the snow like it was placed, not dropped. And next to it, a necklace, stone beads, some cracked, strung on sinew, hardened and curled by time. Human. You swallow hard. The camel doesn't react. You stare at the necklace. You don't touch it. This place is thick with stories you don't belong to. You breathe and move on. Because the camel does. And if there's one thing you've learned by now, this place remembers everything, but only for those who keep walking. The light changes. You didn't notice it happening. There was no sunrise, no dramatic crack in the sky, but the white gloom of the snowblind has shifted to something stranger. The shadows are back. Not harsh, not long, just enough to remind you that the sky still has moods. And tonight, it's starting to glow. Green. It begins like watercolor bleeding upward from the horizon in slow ribbons. Not fast like lightning, not still like starlight. The aurora. You stop walking. The camel does not. It strides ahead, bathed in shifting curtains of green, its fur flickering with color like it's wrapped in seaweed and sunburn. You've never seen anything like it. No photograph or documentary ever captured the way the aurora moves, like it's searching for something. Or dancing for someone who left. The camel walks straight through it, and for one irrational, beautiful second, you think it might vanish, step into the sky itself. But it doesn't. It's too grounded for that. It belongs to the earth. Still, for the first time, the camel looks translucent, unreal, more myth than mammal. Historians still debate how ancient peoples interpreted the aurora. Some saw spirits, others omens. There are carvings that might depict it wave lines above animals, circles around human eyes. No one can agree. But one thing's certain, you see something like this once and your vocabulary becomes a lot more poetic. You breathe in sharply. The air smells cleaner now. Still cold but crisper. The musk of bones and thaw pits is behind you. Ahead lies space, and motion, and that humming, shifting sky. The camel crests a small rise and you follow. And that's when you realize something strange. Your shadow is back. Not long, but it's there. You'd forgotten what it looked like. There hasn't been a real shadow for hours, days maybe. But the aurora impossibly casts a sort of light that makes everything feel less forgotten. Odd fact, animals with wide pupils like camels see well in low light. It's not night vision exactly, but their eyes adjust faster than yours ever will. The camel saw this glow coming a long time before you did. You watch it raise its head toward the lights, and for the first time in this journey it stops walking just to look. Its nostrils flare slightly. Its ears pivot back and forth, listening to what? To you. To the sky. To the thing behind the sky. You walk closer, boots crunching on frost-hardened gravel. You're on higher land now. Slight elevation. Enough to feel like you've reached a milestone. Or maybe just another vantage point for disappointment. The camel lets out a low breath, almost a sigh. And then for the briefest moment it shakes its head. A small, slow motion, like a shrug, or an answer. You want to speak, ask a question, whisper something that feels meaningful, but nothing comes. So instead you sit. You drop to the ground slowly, carefully, letting your pack settle behind you. The cold creeps in fast, but you welcome it now. It's honest. Honest things are rare out here. The camel stays upright, silhouetted against the green lights above like a statue of something no one worships anymore but probably should. You stare up too. The aurora swirls and flutters. A ripple, a pulse. Colors shift, green, yes, but also purple at the edges. Blue ghosts dancing with solar storms. No wonder the old myths got weird. No wonder the bones never face the same direction. You remember something half buried in a book you once skimmed at a gas station? Some cultures believe the aurora was the breath of sleeping animals or the final trails of the recently dead. You don't know if that's true. You don't care. It's beautiful enough to be believed. The camel lowers its head just slightly. Its eye catches the light reflective for the first time, like polished stone. And suddenly you imagine what it would be like to see this same sky 10,000 years ago. No noise pollution, no satellites, no road flares or headlamps, just this giant animal and this giant sky. And you somewhere in between, feeling smaller than you ever have and more connected than you deserve. You glance to your left. You're not alone. Footprints, faint, small. Someone walked this ridge recently. Not modern, not fossilized either. A human. Probably a child. You follow them with your eyes and find the remnants of a fire ring. Stones turned inward. Charred fragments at the center. There's a blackened stick, half burned. And next to it, a bit of carved bone, smooth, whittled, shaped like a fish or a bird. Something symbolic. Something pocket-sized. You don't touch it. You just look. The camel turns now almost fully sideways. For a moment, its profile is perfect against the aurora. Its hump curved like a wave. Its neck long, noble, awkward in a way that feels honest. You take a mental photograph, and then it walks again. Past the footprints, past the fire, past whatever ceremony happened here before you arrived. And you stand. You don't say goodbye to the fire pit. You just follow. Because that's the rhythm now. Walk when the camel walks. Stop when it listens. And when the sky dances, you remember. Some animals were made to survive. Some were made to remember. And some, like this one, were made to walk beneath the stars without ever needing a destination. You're not the only one who followed it. That realization hits slowly, like frost creeping into your boots. Subtle at first, then suddenly undeniable. The camel, still gliding ahead through pale terrain and under shimmering green skies, walks a path that feels worn. Not physically, not like a highway or a game trail, but emotionally. Like this exact route has been studied by desperate eyes before yours. The human footprints aren't gone, they're multiplying. Not recent, not crisp, but scattered impressions in snowdrift hollows, some older than others, some overlapping like echoes of a story told too many times. Small feet, big feet, some heavy with burden, others skipping. Children. Families. You stop walking for a second. The wind carries faint warmth now, just a trick of the temperature inversion, you tell yourself. But it smells different here. Less like frost and more like wood smoke that left centuries ago. The camel crests a low rise. As you follow, the land shifts again. Below, tucked into the shallow scoop of a wind-carved basin, are the remains of a human shelter. Not a tent, not a house, a ring of stones. A curve of mammoth ribs placed deliberately interlocked, their long arcs forming the memory of a roof. Historians still debate the scale and frequency of human migrations across Beringia. Some argue it was a constant trickle. Others say it came in pulses, waves of bold, terrified people driven by hunger or vision or exile. But they agree on one thing. The people who followed the camel's kind didn't just walk. They learned from it. You descend into the basin, carefully. Everything here feels sacred, even if no one would say it out loud. The shelter is long abandoned, but it's not ruined. The snow has respected it. The wind has bent around it. You run your glove along a rib, thick ivory turned dull brown, smoothed by time and use. Someone placed it here to hold up a roof of hides that are now gone. Inside the ring are tools, flint shards, scrapers, bones carved into needles, a small pile of stones that looks almost ceremonial. And beside those stones, camel dung, fossilized, dry, cracked open like seeds. Odd fact, ancient camel dung is a goldmine for paleoecologists. Inside those fibrous lumps are seeds, pollen, even fragments of DNA from plants long extinct. One such sample revealed the camel's diet wasn't just shrubs and tundra grass, it included woody twigs and even mushrooms, a weirdly fungal forest-savvy menu. You squat beside the dung and realize what it means. They followed it. Not to hunt it, to learn from it. The camel wasn't prey, it was teacher. You stand slowly scanning the basin. Another set of footprints leads away toward a narrow ravine tucked between ice-glazed ridges. You follow them, not because the camel needs you to, but because something about this moment demands continuity. You round the edge of the ravine and nearly trip over it, a human skull, small, partially buried. Beside it, a shell necklace. Not native to this region, probably brought here. Carried hundreds of miles, a keepsake from a place warmer, a promise from a coast now drowned. The camel stands at the far end of the ravine. It's waiting again. You join it. From this angle you can see the landscape stretching for miles, a quiet floodplain, marked with animal tracks, human paths, and the broken white bones of those who didn't make it. But here's the thing. Most did. The evidence is thin, yes. Weather erases so much. But archaeologists have found hearth tools and DNA traces of people who crossed this impossible space and then kept going. East, into North America, into stories that would one day become nations' myths and arguments. And somewhere along that path they carried what the camel taught them. Where to walk, when to rest. What plants grow near meltwater, where the ice forgets to be dangerous. You glance at the camel. Its eyes are closed, not sleeping, remembering. Historians would roll their eyes at you. They'd say you're anthropomorphizing, projecting meaning. Camels don't remember. They respond to stimuli. Sure, okay. But then again, how do you explain the route it walks? The timing, the stops, the way it waits at old fire pits and rib shelters. You place your hand on its side. It doesn't move. Its fur is dense and warm and smells faintly of bark musk and something like sun-baked stone. You want to say something, but the only word that comes out is, thanks. It's dumb, but it's all you have. The camel exhales. You swear its breath smells like pine needles. Then it turns and walks again, up the far slope, toward light. You follow. Slowly. And behind you, in the windless bowl of the ravine, the footprints remain a little longer. Then they begin to fade. Because that's the truth about these people. They didn't leave monuments. They left lessons, buried in bones, carved in movement, woven into the memory of an animal that never needed to speak to be understood. And now, you're part of that story. You two are following the one thing that never asked to be followed, just watched and remembered. The camel slips. Not dramatically, not like a cartoon banana peel incident, just one step that lands on rock-glazed ice and its leg shudders beneath it. You see the whole tower of its body sway, weight shifting, muscles bracing, and for a second you think it's going down. But it catches itself. One broad foot finds better purchase. Its neck extends forward, tail tilts slightly for balance, and the moment passes. Just a moment. A tiny crack in an otherwise seamless procession. But it's enough to make you stop. Because in that half-second slip you saw something rare, the possibility of failure. You catch up and step around the patch it avoided. Not out of instinct, out of imitation. And when you glance back at where its hoof scuffed the stone, you notice something strange. A shallow depression. Not new. This has happened here before. The rock bears several faint indentations. Old camel tracks long since weathered down to mere suggestion, like knee prints in prayer-worn temple floors. This is a place where even the survivors remember falling. The camel turns to look at the depression. Not for long, not mournfully, just knowingly. It lifts its foot and moves on. You do the same. But something's changed. You're climbing now slowly, and the land is less forgiving. The snow is crusted harder, the rocks sharper. The wind finds your bones with sharper angles. And the camel, still steady, still fluid, starts to shift more weight into each step. It's not tired, but it's aware. The climb crests onto a narrow ledge, below a jagged sweep of black stone and brittle ice like broken mirrors frozen in scream mid-shatter. You tread carefully. The camel doesn't even pause. You whisper, "You've done this before." It doesn't answer. Of course, but maybe it doesn't need to. You begin to understand something unspoken. This path, this cliffside, this fault line, it's not chosen randomly. It's been crossed again and again. Not because it's the safest, but because it's the most memorable. This is where the camel fell once, and then kept going. Odd fact: camels have incredibly flexible joints, especially in the knees. They can recover from slips better than most quadrupeds. Their long legs and padded feet distribute shock in ways that protect ligaments. They don't panic. They recalibrate. You reach a windswept promontory. It looks down over a glacier-scored basin. The ice is so old it glows faintly blue in its crevasses. You see the glint of frozen pools and fractured melt lines stretching like veins across a sleeping hand. The camel stops here, not to rest, to look. Its gaze sweeps across the basin, not with expectation, but with memory. This is a place it remembers kneeling, and not just for listening. You walk closer and the wind calms briefly, as if the land itself wants to listen too. And then, like peeling back paper, the memory unfolds in you. You see it, a storm, long past, winds stronger than this. The camel alone, younger, smaller, covered in a fresher coat of red-brown wool. It stumbles here. Not a slip, a collapse. The ice had buckled beneath a melting edge. One leg plunged in. It twisted, pulled back, barely escaped. And yet, it returned. Why? Historians still debate whether animals possess spatial memory in the long term, especially over generations. Some claim migration patterns are learned by repetition, not memory. Others argue that trauma imprints location more deeply than instinct ever could. You stand at the edge and realize this isn't just a path, it's a scar. And the camel walks it not in ignorance, but in honor. Because every journey that matters includes the place where you almost didn't make it. And every scar worth wearing is one you chose to face again. You sit down. Right there. Right where the ice buckled before. Not out of dramatics, but respect. The ground is solid now. Cold, sure. But honest. You look to the camel. It's still standing, still watching the basin. Maybe it sees ghosts. Maybe it is one. And then without warning, it kneels. Again. Not like before, not brief. It settles fully into the snow. Elbows tucked, chest low, neck relaxed. Not exhaustion. Remembrance. You do the same. Lower yourself beside it. Snow seeps into your pants. You don't care. The cold is part of it now. You reach out and for the first time place your hand on its back. It doesn't flinch. Its fur is thick, warm, coarse, like bundled grass soaked in sunlight. You close your eyes and you feel it. The memory, the echo of all those who followed it. The humans who mimicked its steps, the herds who trailed its scent, the ones who died here, and the ones who made it across. You feel the knees of memory settle into the ground, not in surrender, in ritual. You stay there for minutes, maybe hours. Time doesn't work right here. The aurora above shifts again, casting new shades across the landscape. Violet now and gold at the edges, like bruises healing in reverse. And then the camel rises. So do you. It turns and walks on. You glance back only once at the basin at the knee-shaped dip in the stone, and you whisper, "I'll remember too," not because you need to, because something in your bones already does. The cold is no longer cruel. You've crossed that invisible threshold where the air no longer tries to punish you. It just is. Like a fact. Like time. Like gravity. Something that shapes you without apology. The camel leads you across a plateau of silence. That's not an exaggeration. This place has forgotten how to echo. Every step sinks softly into snow that doesn't crunch, doesn't collapse, just accepts your weight. Your breath fogs like slow smoke hanging in the air before fading. You've entered the last stretch, where the ice forgot to melt. That's what the old stories whisper. If you ever find the place where even summer refuses to come, you've gone too far. Or maybe just far enough. The camel doesn't slow. It knows this stretch. Every shallow dip, every ridge of buried stone. Its ears twitch not from sound, but from a kind of memory that doesn't live in the brain. You wonder how many like it came this far. How many crossed the entire sea only to find this. A place too stubborn for thaw, too sacred to change. A place that doesn't welcome, doesn't reject, just waits. Odd fact, some patches of Arctic permafrost are over 700,000 years old. They've outlived entire climate shifts, ice ages, extinctions, even comets. Frozen ground so deep it holds the pollen of forests that no longer exist. A landscape that keeps secrets better than history books, and yet it's not lifeless. You begin to notice things. The way the snow drifts stack differently here. The way the rocks wear coats of lichen that haven't been seen for thousands of miles. The way nothing seems dead, just paused. The camel stops beside a narrow ridge, and you see them. Tracks, faint, shallow, made delicate by age and preservation. Camel prints, dozens, maybe hundreds, arcing across the slope. Some so shallow they seem printed in light. Others deeper, frozen, mid-stride. The camel steps into one. Perfectly. A match. You step closer and kneel, brushing the edge of one fossilized impression with your glove. Still there, still sharp. These aren't yesterday's tracks, these are echoes. You look up at the camel, half expecting it to say something. Instead, it breathes. A slow, controlled exhale that steams out across the snow like a whisper. Then it moves again. You follow, carefully now, because this part doesn't feel like it belongs to you. This is a memory preserved in climate. In stubbornness, in frost that refused to forget. You crest the final slope, and everything below you goes quiet. The horizon flattens into a stretch of pale nothing, broken only by small humps of buried rock and ice-polished ridges. The kind of place where GPS glitches and compasses shrug. The kind of place where the wind doesn't go around you, it passes through. This is where the land ends, not in cliffs or water, just in stillness. You feel the weight of it. Not fear, not awe, just recognition. This is where the journey always ends, isn't it? The edge of everything. The place where the world says that's far enough. The camel continues. It steps carefully onto a patch of layered snow that doesn't move beneath its weight. It knows how to walk this, like someone reading aloud from a book they've memorized. You try to do the same. But you feel like a child again, second-guessing every step, watching for cracks that might swallow your certainty. Then something glints ahead. You squint. It's not ice. It's stone, something carved. You move toward it, heart tapping faster now. It's a marker. Not big, not flashy. Just a stone set upright at an angle. Weathered not by tools, but by wind and time. Beside it, bones. Camel bones, long decayed. Frozen in a collapse that looks peaceful. Chosen. The camel stops beside it, and for the first time it lowers its head, not to listen, not to sniff, but to rest. Its jaw presses against the snow, not in pain, in solidarity. You kneel again, slowly. You're not cold. You're not afraid. You're still. Historians still debate whether animals like camels return to ancestral sites to die. There's evidence of elephants doing it, of whales. But the fossil record is too scattered to confirm patterns for camels. Still stories persist of herds moving toward empty ground, pausing in places where their kind once fell. You sit in silence beside it. The aurora above has softened, still moving, still vivid, but less dramatic, like a curtain about to fall. You place a hand on the snow beside the bones. You don't say anything. There's nothing left to say. The camel breathes again, then rises and walks on. You stay for a moment longer. You want to remember every sound, every step, every space where silence felt sacred. You rise, follow, not out of obligation, but because the tracks don't go any farther. And that's how you know the camel's not leading anymore. It's just walking. Because some things don't end. They just continue in softer footsteps until the land forgets to be land and the ice forgets to melt. And you forget you were ever supposed to stop. It walked all the way across. You stand now where land becomes land again. Not snow, not ice, not the trembling crust of a frozen sea, but earth, solid, dry, cracked in places, dark in others. Tufts of ancient grass push through frost-bitten soil. The wind is quieter here, less personal, less curious. The camel walks 10 paces ahead and then finally it stops. Not from exhaustion, not from pain, but because there's nowhere left to go. You exhale long and uneven. You didn't know you were holding your breath. The sky is empty now. The aurora's gone. Replaced by a pale blue smear, the kind that promises morning, even if it doesn't deliver. You can see farther now, and what you see is startling. No trail, no welcome, no obvious ending. Just this open plain, this final patch of old ground where the camel has stopped, not because it's over, but because it isn't. You walk up beside it. The camel's breath curls gently in the quiet air. You can hear it again, each inhale measured, each exhale like a page turning. There are no signs, no flags, no bones, no relics, just flatness and space and the weight of what's behind you. And still it feels complete. You lower your pack and sit. The camel stays standing. Its ears twitch once, then still. You wonder how many of them made it this far. How many camels reached this final patch and decided this was enough? How many just kept walking? Odd fact, in a recently thawed layer of permafrost in Alaska, researchers discovered camel remains dated tens of thousands of years old, hundreds of miles from where they were supposed to be. No fossil trail, no previous evidence of passage, just proof that they were there. Quietly, without fanfare, without forgetting. You close your eyes and imagine the crossing behind you, the ice, the groaning bridge, the bones in the thaw pits, the wolves that watched without blinking, the footprints in the ravine, the fire circles, the fall, the pause, and the green sky that didn't speak but definitely sang. You realize something now, something gentle and terrible. Crossing isn't about survival. It's about memory. That's what the camel's been carrying this whole time. Not just fat and fur and frost-resistant lungs, but something heavier. A ritual, a retelling, a long unbroken song of motion. It walked all the way across, not because it needed to, but because it remembers where others couldn't finish. The camel shifts its weight, looks out at the plain, and lowers its body slowly, carefully, until it is resting on its folded legs. Not kneeling, not grieving, just being. You sit beside it, gloved hand resting on the earth. You expect to feel something dramatic. A pulse, a shift, a whisper of ancestors. But what you feel is silence. And what you understand is this: you made it. Not because you followed perfectly, but because you didn't stop. Historians won't record your name. There will be no carvings, no plaque. But if someone else walks this way in 100 years, 10,000, they might feel something here. In the stillness, in the snow that's not quite snow, in the shape of the sky when nothing moves. And they'll wonder, did something walk here once? And maybe the wind will tell them yes, that it crossed the sea of ice, that it slipped and stood again, that it carried memory in its hump, that it stopped only when the story had been walked out fully. You lie back in the snow. The sky is gray again. The camel breathes. And the cold, it doesn't hurt anymore. It just stays. Like the story, like the bridge, like you.